The ballroom smelled like champagne and carefully maintained superiority. I adjusted my tie, a navy blue one I'd bought at Macy's during a clearance sale 3 years ago, and followed Emma through the entrance of the Westwood Country Club. Crystal chandeliers cast golden light across faces that had never worried about mortgage payments or grocery budgets. I was 58 years old, married to the woman I loved for 32 years, and about to endure another evening of being treated like the help. I was also worth $2.1 billion, but nobody here knew that. Emma squeezed my hand as we approached the registration table. She looked beautiful in a dress we'd found at Nordstrom Rack, her dark hair pulled back in a simple style that made my chest tighten the same way it had when we first met at a literacy fundraiser in 1993. She was 23 then, a nursing student with tired eyes and a quick laugh. I was 26, teaching high school physics and barely making rent.
Michael and Emma Chen, she said to the young woman at the table. The woman's smile shifted almost imperceptibly as she checked the list. Oh, yes, Mrs. Ashford's daughter. You're at table 12. She handed us name badges with that particular brand of politeness reserved for people who don't quite belong. Table 12 was in the back, naturally, near the kitchen doors. Mom's really outdone herself this time, Emma muttered as we navigated through the crowd. A 76th birthday party at the country club, as if turning 76 is some kind of achievement. I kissed her temple. It's her day. We'll smile, eat some overpriced chicken, and leave early. You're too good, you know that? She looked up at me with those brown eyes that had convinced me 3 decades ago to take a chance on love instead of letting my growing bank account define my life. She's been awful to you since the day we met. Water off a duck's back, I said. That wasn't entirely true.
Victoria. Ashford had spent 32 years making it abundantly clear that her daughter had married beneath her station. I was the public school teacher who drove a 2013 Honda Civic with a dent in the passenger door. She was old money, the kind that came with summer homes in the Hamptons and ancestors who'd arrived on ships with proper documentation. The fact that I'd sold a tech startup called DataStream Analytics 28 years ago for $890 million, well, that was information Victoria didn't have. Neither did Emma. We found table 12 tucked behind a decorative column. Our son Jason was already there, looking uncomfortable in a sport coat, his artist's hands fidgeting with a water glass. Sarah, our daughter, arrived moments later, still in her medical resident scrubs, having driven straight from a 36-hour shift at County General. Sorry I'm late, Sarah said, hugging her mother. 3-car pile-up on the interstate.
You look exhausted, honey.
Emma touched Sarah's face with maternal concern.
I'm fine, Mom. Coffee is my co-pilot.
Sarah turned to me.
Hey, Dad. Ready for another round of Grandma's greatest hits?
I've been preparing all week, I said. I even practiced my humble smile in the mirror. Jason laughed, but it didn't reach his eyes. Something was bothering him. I'd noticed it when he'd come over for dinner last week, the way he'd grown quiet when his mother mentioned Victoria's party. I made a mental note to ask him about it later. The ballroom filled with Victoria's friends, women in statement jewelry, men in suits that cost more than my monthly teaching salary. They circulated like sharks in well-tailored wool, exchanging gossip and business cards. I recognized some faces from previous Ashford family events. They never quite remembered mine.
Victoria made her entrance at 7:30 sharp, descending the grand staircase in a silver gown that probably cost more than Jason's annual rent. She was 76, but maintained herself with the kind of vigilance that came from having the resources to fight aging with every available weapon. Her hair was perfect. Her posture was perfect. Her smile, as she surveyed her kingdom, was perfectly satisfied. Emma stiffened beside me. Here we go. Victoria worked the room like a politician, pausing at each table to receive birthday wishes and compliments. I watched her move closer to us, table by table, and felt Emma's hand find mine under the tablecloth. "Emma, darling." Victoria finally reached us, allowing her daughter to stand and accept a careful hug that wouldn't disturb her makeup. "You look lovely. Is that a new dress?" "New to me," Emma said. "Nordstrom Rack had a sale." Victoria's smile tightened microscopically. "How resourceful." Her eyes moved to me. "Michael."
Still teaching, I assume? Still teaching, I confirmed. 28th year at Lincoln High. How admirable. Public service is so important. She said it the way someone might compliment a janitor for keeping the toilets clean. Technically appreciative, but fundamentally condescending. Though I must say, it's remarkable that you've managed to support a family on a teacher's salary. Emma must be quite the financial wizard. We do all right, I said evenly. Oh, I'm sure you make do. The simple life has its charms. Victoria's attention shifted to Jason. Jason, dear, are you still pursuing that art hobby of yours? My son's jaw clenched. It's not a hobby, Grandma. It's my career. Of course. And how is that going? Have you sold anything recently? The air at our table grew thick. I knew Jason had been struggling. What Victoria didn't know, what nobody at this table knew except me, was that Jason's affordable studio in the Arts District, the one he'd been so excited to find last year, was owned by a shell corporation registered to my private investment portfolio. The landlord who'd mysteriously offered him a rate 40% below market. That was my property manager, following my instructions. I'm working on a new series, Jason said quietly. How nice. Victoria patted his shoulder with the affection one might show a slow-learning pet. It's good to have hobbies while you figure out what you're going to do with your life. You're 30 now, aren't you? Perhaps it's time to consider something more practical. I'm always looking for people at the gallery. The gallery? Jason's voice was careful. Yes, the Ashford Gallery on 5th Street. We need someone to help with inventory management. It's not glamorous, but it pays $30,000 a year. It might help you, well, get on your feet. I felt Emma tense beside me. Sarah's face flushed red. But Jason just nodded, his expression carefully blank. I'll think about it, Grandma. Victoria beamed. Wonderful. See, this is what family is for, helping each other out. Her eyes moved to Sarah. And Sarah, dear, still working those terrible hours at that dreadful public hospital? County General, Sarah said. And yes, still a resident, 3 more years. Such dedication. Though I do worry about those student loans Emma mentioned. Medical school is terribly expensive, isn't it? Victoria shook her head sympathetically. If only your father had chosen a more lucrative career path, things might have been easier for you children. The room seemed to pulse with my heartbeat. I could feel everyone at the table waiting for my response. This was Victoria's specialty, the perfectly worded insult that made any defense look petty. The kids are doing great, I said. We're very proud of them. Of course you are. Parents always are, regardless of circumstances. Victoria straightened. Well, I should continue making my rounds. Do enjoy the evening. Oh, and Michael, I hope the Civic made it here all right. I know older vehicles can be unreliable. She glided away, leaving a wake of silent fury at our table. I'm so sorry, Emma whispered. I don't know why she has to be like that. It's fine, I said. It's not fine, Dad, Sarah snapped. She's been treating you like trash for 30 years. When are you going to stand up to her? Your father is a better person than I am, Emma said quietly.
He knows she's not worth the fight.
Jason hadn't said anything. He was staring at his water glass, his jaw working like he was chewing on words he couldn't quite spit out.
Dinner was exactly what I'd predicted. Overpriced chicken in a sauce with a French name, vegetables arranged in architectural formations, and enough wine to make everyone forget they were eating banquet food at $200 a plate. Victoria held court at the head table, surrounded by her closest friends, occasionally gesturing in our direction while making what I assumed were observations about her daughter's disappointing life choices. The speeches started during dessert. Victoria's business partner from the gallery, her tennis coach, her financial advisor, they all stood to praise her vision, her generosity, her impeccable taste. The generosity part made me smile into my coffee. 6 months ago, Jason had asked Victoria for a $5,000 loan to buy supplies for a major commission. She'd refused, suggesting he learn to budget better. The supplies had appeared anyway, delivered to his studio by an anonymous donor. Finally, Victoria herself stood to speak.
The room fell silent with the kind of reverence usually reserved for papal addresses.
Thank you all for being here tonight,
She began, her voice carrying across the ballroom with practiced ease.
76 years. It seems impossible, doesn't it? But I've been blessed with a wonderful life, wonderful friends, and most importantly, a family I love dearly.
Emma's hand found mine again.
My daughter Emma is here tonight with her family.
Victoria gestured toward our table, and I felt 100 pairs of eyes turn our way.
Emma made certain choices in her life, choices I might not have made, but choices I've learned to accept. She married for love, which is admirable, even if that love came with certain practical limitations. The room was so quiet I could hear the kitchen staff moving beyond the swinging doors. Her husband, Michael, is a high school teacher. A noble profession, certainly, though not a particularly lucrative one.
And their children, Jason and Sarah, are finding their own paths. Jason is an artist. She said it with the same inflection someone might use for unemployed.
And Sarah is drowning in medical school debt while working at a public hospital.
Sarah's face had gone white. Jason was gripping his fork like a weapon.
But you know what I've decided? I've decided to help.
Victoria's smile was beatific.
Michael, would you stand up, please?
My heart rate didn't change. I'd been through enough of Victoria's performances to know where this was going. But Emma's hand was shaking in mine, and that made something cold settle in my chest. I stood.
Michael, you've been teaching for 28 years. That's admirable dedication. But let's be honest, it hasn't exactly provided the life my daughter deserves. So I'd like to offer you an opportunity.
She paused for effect.
The Ashford Gallery needs a facilities manager, someone to handle maintenance, cleaning, basic upkeep.
It's not teaching, but it pays better. $35,000 a year plus benefits. What do you say?
The ballroom was silent. 100 people holding their breath, waiting to see what the poor teacher would do when offered charity by his wealthy mother-in-law. Emma started to stand, her face flushed with anger. I gently pressed her shoulder, keeping her seated. "That's very generous, Victoria," I said. My voice was steady. 30 years of teaching high school had given me exceptional classroom management skills, and this wasn't that different from dealing with a particularly theatrical sophomore. But I should probably disclose something before I accept. Victoria's smile wavered slightly. Disclose what? The Ashford Gallery, the building on 5th Street, right? The one with the industrial loft aesthetic and the exposed brick? Yes, that's right. I've been leasing it for 15 years. It's the perfect space for... I'm the owner, I said. The silence changed quality.
It wasn't anticipation anymore. It was confusion. Victoria laughed, a sharp sound like glass breaking. I'm sorry, what? I own the building. I bought it in 2010 as an investment property through a holding company called Anderson Holdings, LLC. Your lease comes up for renewal next month, actually. I've been meaning to have my property manager reach out to you about that. The color drained from Victoria's face.
That's not possible.
It's very possible. I can have my attorney send you the deed records if you'd like verification. I bought the building for $2.3 million. Current market value is about 6.8. You've been a good tenant, always pay on time. I have no intention of changing anything about our arrangement. Emma's hand had gone slack in mine. I glanced down and saw her staring at me like I'd grown a second head. Victoria's mouth opened and closed twice before sound emerged. You're a teacher. You drive a Honda Civic.
You live in a house that's barely 1,800 square feet.
Yes, I agreed.
I do all those things. I also sold a tech company called DataStream Analytics in 1997 for $890 million. I've spent the last 28 years investing wisely and living quietly. The ballroom erupted in whispers. Victoria stood frozen at her microphone, her carefully constructed birthday triumph crumbling around her.
You're lying, she said. This is some kind of joke.
No joke. Would you like me to continue? I didn't wait for an answer. Jason's studio, the one on Maple Street with the surprisingly affordable rent. That's my building, too. I've owned it for 6 years. I wanted my son to have a safe space to pursue his passion without being crushed by Los Angeles rental prices. Jason's fork clattered against his plate. Dad? And Sarah, honey, those student loans you've been worried about? They were paid off 2 years ago by the Westbridge Foundation. That's a charitable organization I established in 2005. The foundation notified the loan servicing company that your debt had been purchased and forgiven. I believe you received a letter about it. You thought it was some kind of administrative error. Sarah's hands covered her mouth. Tears streamed down her face. The clinic at County General where Sarah works, the new equipment in the emergency department, the renovated break rooms, the upgraded staff facilities. The foundation donated $4 million last year. Anonymous donor, of course. Victoria's face had gone from pale to red. You've been lying. To your wife, to your children, for 30 years. 28 years, I corrected. I sold the company 4 years after Emma and I married. And yes, I kept it private. Not because I was lying, but because I was protecting something more valuable than money. I looked at Emma. Her eyes were swimming with tears, her expression a complicated mixture of shock, confusion, and something I couldn't quite read. When I met Emma, she was everything I'd been looking for without knowing I was looking. She was smart, funny, kind. She valued substance over flash. She told me on our third date that she'd left her last boyfriend because he'd become obsessed with making money, with status, with climbing social ladders. I smiled at the memory. She said she wanted someone who knew what really mattered. So you lied to her, Victoria said. You're a liar. I built a life with her, I said. A real life. Not one defined by bank accounts or stock portfolios. We raised our kids in a normal neighborhood. They went to public schools. They learned that success comes from hard work, not trust funds. Jason became an artist because he loves art, not because he had a safety net.
Sarah became a doctor because she wanted to help people, not because medical school debt didn't matter.
I turned back to Victoria. And you, Victoria, spend 30 years judging me,
dismissing me, treating me like I was somehow less than you because I chose to work a job I loved instead of chasing money I didn't need. You measured my worth in dollars and found me lacking. But you know what? I never measured yours at all. Because I learned something you never did. Money doesn't make you better. It just makes you louder. The ballroom was absolutely silent. Your lease renews next month at the same rate it's always been, I continued. Jason's studio rent won't change. The foundation will continue supporting County General. I'm not telling you this to hurt you or embarrass you, though I suspect I've done both. I'm telling you because you just offered me a job cleaning toilets in a building I own. And I thought you deserved to understand why that's funny.
Victoria's mouth moved, but no sound came out. I sat down. My legs felt like water, and my heart was hammering so hard I thought everyone in the room could hear it. Emma was staring at me with wide eyes.
Michael,
she whispered.
is this real?
It's real, I said quietly. And I'm sorry I didn't tell you. I was going to. I kept meaning to. But then months turned into years, and it became this thing I didn't know how to explain without making it seem like I didn't trust you. Which wasn't it at all. I trusted you with everything that mattered. My heart, our kids, our life. The money was just numbers in accounts I checked twice a year. $2 billion, Emma said faintly. You're worth $2 billion. 2.1, approximately. Markets fluctuate. Sarah made a sound between a laugh and a sob. Jason was still staring at me like I was a stranger. Victoria found her voice. I want you out of my building. You have a lease, I reminded her gently.
Through the end of next year, if you want to exercise your renewal option. I'm not going to force you out, Victoria. That was never the point of any of this.
Then what was the point?
She was shaking now, fury and humiliation warring across her face.
To make me look like a fool?
No, I said honestly. The point was to build a life that mattered. To raise kids who knew their worth wasn't in their bank accounts. To stay married to a woman who fell in love with a physics teacher, not a tech millionaire. The point was to wake up every morning next to Emma and know that she chose me, not my portfolio. I stood again, helping Emma to her feet. Sarah and Jason rose with us. Happy birthday, Victoria, I said. Thank you for the lovely evening. We'll see ourselves out. We walked through that silent ballroom together, 4 people who suddenly had a lot to talk about. Behind us, I heard the whispers starting, the explosion of gossip that would fuel country club conversations for the next year. I didn't care. Emma was silent in the parking lot, silent as we reached the Honda Civic with its passenger side dent. I opened her door, I always opened her door, and waited for her to get in. Instead, she turned to face me. $2.1 billion, she said again. Give or take, I said. And you've been teaching high school physics for 28 years. I love teaching high school physics. Our house is 1,800 square feet. It's paid off, has been for 20 years. You drive a 2013 Honda Civic. It's reliable, good gas mileage. Emma's laugh was shaky, almost hysterical. I have been budgeting for 30 years. I've been clipping coupons. I made the kids share a bathroom because we couldn't afford to renovate. I've been feeling guilty every time I bought myself a new pair of shoes. I know, I said quietly. And I should have told you. I should have told you so many times. But Emma, every time I thought about it, I remembered what you said about your ex.
about how money changed him, about how you wanted someone who valued the right things. And I kept thinking, what if telling you changes us? What if suddenly we're not Michael and Emma anymore? We're Michael the billionaire and Emma his wife. Tears rolled down her cheeks.
You idiot. You beautiful, stupid idiot. Nothing could have changed us. I didn't fall in love with your bank account 32 years ago, and I wouldn't have fallen in love with it if you told me about it later. I fell in love with you. The man who spent his Saturday afternoons tutoring kids for free. The man who cried during Pixar movies. The man who made me laugh when my nursing shifts were hell.
I know that now, I said. But fear isn't always rational. Sarah's voice came from behind us.
So, I don't have student loans? I turned to see both kids standing there, Jason looking shell-shocked, and Sarah somewhere between laughing and crying. You don't have student loans, I confirmed. Haven't had them for 2 years.
And my studio? Jason asked.
40% below market rate. I wanted you to have the space to create without the pressure of impossible rent.
But I still struggled, Jason said slowly. I still had months where I didn't know if I could make it.
I know. Because that struggle taught you things that money couldn't. It taught you discipline, resourcefulness, how to value your own work. If I'd just handed you everything, you wouldn't be the artist you are now.
That's really messed up, Dad, Sarah said,
but she was smiling through her tears. I know, I agreed. I'm sorry. I did the best I could with an impossible situation. Maybe I made the wrong choices. Maybe I should have told you all years ago, but I couldn't figure out how to give you the gifts of security and struggle at the same time, without hiding what I was doing. Emma wiped her eyes.
We need to talk about this. For a long time. You can't just drop, by the way, I'm a billionaire, into our marriage after 32 years and expect everything to be fine.
I know.
I'm angry with you.
I know.
I'm also incredibly proud of you for destroying my mother in front of all her friends.
I smiled. That part felt pretty good. Can we go home now? Jason asked.
I need to sit down. I need to sit down for approximately the next 48 hours. Home sounds good, Emma said.
She looked at me, really looked at me, and I saw past the shock to something deeper.
Michael Chen, physics teacher and secret billionaire. I have been married to you for 32 years, and I apparently don't know you at all.
You know me better than anyone, I said. You know the parts that matter. The rest is just details. $2 billion isn't details. It is when compared to 32 years of breakfast conversations, movie nights on the couch, holding your hand in hospitals when the kids were born, holding you when your father died, laughing until we cried over stupid jokes, raising two incredible humans together. That's the real wealth, Emma. The money's just money. She shook her head, but she was smiling.
You're going to be in so much trouble when we get home.
I know. But first, we're going to swing through a drive-thru because I'm starving, and that chicken at the club was terrible. In the Honda Civic? In the Honda Civic. At least until we have a very long conversation about whether we're keeping the Honda Civic. We ended up at a 24-hour diner, the four of us crammed into a corner booth at 11:30 on a Saturday night. Sarah was still in her scrubs. Jason's sport coat was draped over the seat back. Emma had kicked off her heels. And I sat there looking at my family, my real wealth, and thought about how Victoria would never understand this moment. The happiness that came from hash browns and bad coffee at midnight. The laughter that erupted when Jason said, So does this mean I can finally tell Grandma her art gallery has terrible lighting? The way Emma's hand found mine across the table and held on, even though she was still processing, still figuring out how to feel about everything. Later, much later, when we were home and the kids had left, and Emma and I were alone in our 1,800-square-foot house, she said, "I need to know one thing. Anything. Why now? Why tell everyone tonight?" I thought about that. Because Victoria was going to humiliate Jason, offer him a pity job in front of all those people. And I realized that protecting my secret was less important than protecting our son.
Sometimes you have to let go of the thing you've been holding on to, even if you're not sure what happens next. Emma nodded slowly. We're going to have to figure out what this means. For us, for the kids, for our life. I know. But Michael? She looked at me in the dim light of our bedroom. Thank you for loving me enough to stay a physics teacher. Thank you for choosing our life over an easier one. Thank you for teaching our kids that money doesn't define worth. Thank you for loving a man who drives a dented Honda, I said. She laughed. We're definitely getting you a new car. The Honda's fine. Michael Chen, you are worth $2 billion. You can buy a car made in this decade. But then I'd have to learn new buttons. The Honda and I understand each other. She kissed me then, and I tasted salt from tears she'd cried earlier, but also laughter, also love, also 32 years of building something real together. The simple life had been the point all along.
Not because we couldn't afford more, but because more would have cluttered the things that mattered. The Sunday morning breakfasts where we read the paper and did crosswords together. The walks around the neighborhood where we'd lived for 25 years, knowing our neighbors, being part of a community. The quiet evenings where Emma would study her nursing journals and I'd grade papers, both of us just existing in the same space, comfortable in our shared silence. Victoria would never understand that. She would never understand that I'd had $2 billion and chosen pancakes with my wife over private jets. That I'd had enough money to buy any car in the world and kept the Honda because it was paid off and reliable and it didn't matter. That I'd watched my kids struggle and helped them invisibly because the struggle was teaching them things that money couldn't buy. The world would probably call me crazy. Maybe I was.
But when I looked at Emma falling asleep beside me, her hand still in mine, I knew I'd made the right choices. Every single one of them. Even the Honda Civic. Especially the Honda Civic.